Hey guys, tonight we're going underground. Not metaphorically, not romantically. I mean your knees in the mud, breath caught in your throat kind of descent. The kind of journey where your phone's useless, your map's a rumor, and the only GPS is an old man with a flashlight and too many missing teeth. You've arrived in the belly of the earth, not by accident, but by obsession. You're deep in Myanmar, once called Burma, where rubies have stained legends for 1,000 years. The land is sticky hot, the air is syrupy with mist, and your boots squelch with every slow, reluctant step. You're not in a mine yet, but you will be. First there's jungle. Jungle that slaps you with vines, camouflages snakes, and hums with mosquitoes that seem personally offended by your presence. Above the canopy, the clouds look like they've been stitched together by lightning. Every few hours, a downpour soaks everything down to your bones. But just beneath your feet, somewhere under all that clay and chaos, are rubies. Pigeon blood rubies, to be exact. The rarest, most prized of them all. Stones so red they seem to bleed. Stones once offered to kings, used to bribe gods, and, allegedly, carried into battle by warriors who wanted to die looking fabulous. The Mong region is where you're headed, though it's not the only ruby-producing region in the country. Mogok is the name you'll hear whispered at gem fairs, in back alleys of Bangkok, and across candlelit tables in hotels that cost too much. But Mogok is almost myth now, closed off, guarded, controlled. Your only way in is to not ask permission, and you probably won't survive that. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Post your location and your local time in the comments, always curious to see where my fellow nightcrawlers are tuning in from. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You pay a guide half in cash, half in cigarettes. He says his cousin works a pit that's been lucky lately. He doesn't say what that means, and you don't ask. The journey is a crawl through leech-soaked wetlands and slopes where the mud grabs at your ankles like it wants company. Finally, at the edge of a flooded clearing, you see it. A hole. Not a tunnel, just a pit dug into the earth, sloshing with water, ringed by bamboo scaffolding that would make OSHA cry. You descend by rope. The air turns cool fast. The sunlight vanishes within the first few meters. Lanterns, burning hot and oily, are your only light. Around you, shirtless men pass buckets up and down like lungs breathing. Each scoop of sediment carries a chance, just a sliver of glitter in a world of wet dust. You ask how they know where to dig. Your guide shrugs. Dreams sometimes. He doesn't laugh. Some believe rubies are the crystallized blood of dragons. Others say they grow in veins that move, like arteries under the mountain. Historians still argue whether early Burmese kings really fed prisoners to snakes to protect these mines. But the snakes are real, and you just saw one slip across your path. A miner pulls you aside and shows you a raw stone. Milky, uncut, but unmistakably red. It's been found near Kyak Hanin, the black stones, common markers for ruby-bearing marble. You feel the weight in your hand. It's warm. You want to keep it. You don't. Back above ground, buyers wait. Mostly men in white shirts, some with Rolexes, all with secrets. The stones change hands in seconds. That ruby you just touched? It'll be reclassified, repackaged, and resold a dozen times before it's mounted on someone's finger in Geneva. And here's your reality check. 99% of what's pulled from the ground here never makes it to auction. It's too cloudy, too fractured, or simply lost in the mud. But once in 1,000, a gem is found that changes someone's life or ends it. More than one miner has disappeared after finding a ruby too perfect, too soon. You sleep in a hut with no windows and a radio that only picks up static. Your guide snores beside you, arm flung over his sack of stones. In the distance, thunder rolls. You dream of red. By morning, you're being watched. A boy with a scar and a machete follows your every move. You ask if he wants to trade. He just stares. Turns out, in these hills, foreigners don't just look for rubies. They also vanish like them. You finish your tea, you keep walking. A century ago, British colonists tried to systematize these ruby fields. Surveys, records, mining licenses. That lasted all of 3 years. Then the jungle swallowed the paperwork and the locals went back to digging the way they always had. By intuition, by legend, by superstition. One old man still wears a tooth wrapped in gold around his neck. He swears it came from a snake that guards a pit no one's yet escaped from. You mark your route with chalk, though it'll be gone by the next rain. Every few meters, someone calls your attention to a stone. Most are worthless. A few shimmer with promise. But only once, right before nightfall, do you see it. Nestled between your boot and a root, half covered in wet moss. A glint of blood trapped in stone. You kneel. You dig with your fingers. And you hold it. It's not perfect, but it's yours. You feel the heat through your glove. Not metaphorical heat. Actual warmth. And that's when you realize something odd. The gem is too warm for its surroundings. You look around. The boy is gone. The jungle is still. And the ruby pulses. You don't sleep that night, not because of the insects, though they drone like broken speakers, or the dampness, or the sour campfire rice. You lie awake because the ruby in your hand is still warm. Long after sunset, long after your guide muttered something about ghosts and rolled over, it hasn't cooled. You checked. Twice. At sunrise, you wrap it in cloth and tuck it deep into your bag. You say goodbye with the kind of nod shared by people who've seen something they won't admit to. You leave the jungle behind with skin red from scratches, a liver confused by parasite pills, and a head full of questions. But you also leave with something else. Direction. Next stop, Sri Lanka. Locals call it Ratnapura, Gem Island. If Myanmar is the blood, Sri Lanka is the light. Here, sapphires are not pulled from mountains, but from the wet belly of riverbeds and rice fields, mined by hand in scenes that haven't changed much since the time of Marco Polo. Yes, that Marco Polo, the guy who wore silk before it was cool. He called Sri Lanka's sapphires the best in the world. Historians still argue whether he actually saw one or just repeated what he was paid to write. You arrive in Ratnapura, city of gems, where everyone either mines stones, cuts stones, or knows someone who does both. The town smells of wet stone and burnt sugar, the streets clogged with tuk-tuks, tea shops, and children who don't blink. Your guide here is a woman named Kumari. Her handshake is firmer than yours, and she's not amused by Western questions. No, I don't wear sapphires, she says. They tell too much truth. You think she's joking. She's not. She takes you to a mine, not a sprawling industrial one, but a single shaft behind a banana plantation. A man climbs out of it using a bamboo ladder older than your plane ticket. He's barefoot, smiling, covered in gray mud that smells faintly of clay and something stranger, like rusted rainwater. Inside it's dark. You wear a headlamp. It dies halfway down the shaft. You keep going anyway. At the bottom there's a chamber. Waist deep in water, men and women sift gravel through wicker pans. A sapphire can hide in something the size of a grain of rice. You watch one emerge, dull, dusty blue. Then in sunlight it flashes, like a secret whispered and immediately denied. Kumari pulls you aside. She points to a stone that looks almost violet. That's a pad paradsha, she says. Lotus blossom color. Rare. You reach for it, and she slaps your hand. Not that rare. She explains that sapphires come in nearly every color but red. Red ones, she says, are rubies trying to crash the wrong party. There's a whole argument in gemology about where ruby ends and sapphire begins, based entirely on hue. Historians and scientists still disagree whether ancient stones called balas rubies were actually spinels, sapphires, or something else entirely. You wade into the water. You feel for stones. Most are slick and gray. One feels different, edges just sharp enough to hold memory. You pull it out. Pale yellow. Nothing impressive, but Kumari nods. You have good fingers. You want to ask what that means, but she's already climbing out of the shaft. Later, she tells you about her grandfather, how he once found a sapphire the size of a mango, sold it, bought a house, and never smiled again. Some stones carry too much story, she says. They show you things. When you press, she only shrugs. Some people want to know, some don't. You visit the local gem market. It's outdoors beneath striped canopies that flap like sails. Traders squat on mats, stones spread on velvet or newspaper, chewing beetle and spitting blood red into the dirt. You're offered Ceylon sapphires in every shade, sky blue, cornflower, steel. Some are glass, some are dyed, some maybe are something else entirely. A boy with a torn shirt and immaculate shoes hands you a sapphire. It's cut but cloudy. Then as you angle it toward the sun, something shifts. The color deepens. Not just blue, electric, like seeing lightning from underwater. You ask how much. He names a price that could pay your rent for 6 months. You hesitate. He shrugs, smiles, walks away. You don't chase him, not because you don't want the stone, but because you've seen something flicker behind his eyes. A reflection, maybe, of your ruby. You pull the red stone out that night, under moonlight. It's still warm. You hold it beside the sapphire. They don't touch, but they seem to lean toward each other, as if curious. Somewhere a dog barks. You remember Kumari's voice. Some stones want to be together. Others, not so much. You sleep lightly. The next day you board a flight to a place much colder, where sapphires come from rivers, not mines, where no one's waiting for you, except perhaps the stones themselves. You land in Montana under a sky so wide it feels like it could crush you, blue as polished spinel, thin as a lie, and so quiet it makes your ears ring. No tuk-tuks here, no incense, just wind, pine, and the distant buzz of something that might be a chainsaw, or might be a bear snoring. You're in sapphire country now, not the tropical kind, the glacial, boots freezing to the ground, don't forget your bear spray kind. You've come to the Missouri River, near Helena, not for gold, though they found plenty here in the 1860s, but for the other thing it hid, sapphires. Montana's Yogo sapphires are famous among collectors and cursed among miners. The rocks are beautiful, small and stubborn, just like some people you've dated. The wind here smells like granite and pine sap. It burns your lungs in a satisfying way. You're handed a shovel and a pan and sent down to the riverbed. No one tells you how long it'll take, just that you'll know it when you feel it. Sapphire gravel doesn't shine like it should. It hides in dusty hues, blue-gray, cornflower, sometimes even green. You scoop, swirl, squint. The water is so cold it feels sentient. After an hour, your fingers stop working. A local, chewing jerky like it owes him money, says, "That's when it gets good." You find your first Yogo an hour later. It's tiny, smaller than a lentil, but it's there. And when the sun hits it just right, it flashes a violet so sharp you almost drop it. You remember reading somewhere that the U.S. Air Force once used Montana sapphires in watch bearings for pilots. True? Maybe. Historians still argue whether that story was PR fluff or patriotic fact. Either way, you hold in your hand a stone that once sat under a mile of ice and now shivers in the sun like it knows something you don't. The locals have their own stories. A retired geologist tells you about a sapphire mine cursed by a woman named Betty who swore she could hear the stones singing lies. Another guy says he saw a sapphire change color when someone lied near it. You think they're kidding. Then you see how serious their eyes are. At night, you camp by the creek. There's no signal, no lights, just the hiss of water and the occasional rustle that might be a fox or something bigger. You lay the ruby and sapphire beside each other again, still warm, still drawn to each other. You dream of water, not rain, not waves, just a river, slow and deep, where stones glow beneath the surface like fireflies, and something just beneath them, watching. Morning comes colder. Your socks are frozen, your fingertips are numb, but you go back to the water. You start noticing things, how the gravel changes texture just before a good stone, how some sections feel right. Your hands get smarter, your back gets dumber. At one point, your shovel hits something that isn't rock, not metal either. It's fabric. You pull it up, a canvas pouch, old, moldy, inside 3 stones, all sapphires, cut clean, 1 violet, 1 green, 1 clear, and a note, faded beyond reading. But you swear you see the letters YG, Yogo Gulch maybe, or someone's initials. You hand them over to a local gem cutter. He wipes them clean, holds them to the light, and says, "These haven't been touched in 80 years. You ask how he knows. He just shrugs. They don't lie. You leave the pouch behind. You keep the memory. You keep digging. One woman at the dig site wears a necklace with a dull sapphire the size of a peanut. She says she's had it since she was 5. Found it by accident. Swears it keeps dreams away. You ask what kind of dreams. She says, the ones that end in caves. At night, you light a fire and warm your hands. You take the ruby and sapphire out again, still warm, but this time, they're cold, stone cold. You hold them tighter. You whisper, "Don't do that." No response, just the crackle of the fire. You wake before sunrise and pack. Montana was honest, unforgiving, and now somehow closed. Time to head north, beyond the tree line, to a land of ice and whispering wind, where rubies might exist or might not. Depends who you ask. You step off the bush plane into air that feels like glass, thin, brittle, ready to break. Greenland doesn't welcome you. It doesn't reject you either. It just is. Cold, still, immense. The sky, flat and pale, stretches endlessly above you, and for the first time in weeks, the noise inside your own head goes quiet. Even your heartbeat seems to hush. They told you not to come here. Too expensive, too remote, too uncertain. But one rumor kept circling back. Rubies. Not just scattered trace minerals or tourist gems polished for cruise passengers, but actual ruby-bearing rock, possibly the oldest in the world. You fly into Nuuk, then head north by boat along the fjords, then by foot, and finally, helicopter. The last stretch of your journey ends on a wind-blown plateau of stone and snow, where every step echoes like it's interrupting something ancient. You land near Aappaluttoq, a site so remote the nearest town is barely a whisper across the ice. The ground is pinkish here, dotted with corundum-bearing rock. Sapphirine, they call it. Some of it glitters, some of it lies dead, but a few pieces glow, just faintly, like something trying to remember how. Your guide is a Dane named Lars who says very little and drinks very much. He hands you a chisel, points at a cliff face, and grunts, "Here, rubies maybe." You start to hammer. The rock is cruel, hard as frozen time. You chip, pick, scrape. Hours pass. Your breath clouds in front of your face like ghost signals. Then you see it, a vein, faintly red, not shining, more like bruised into the stone. You call Lars. He nods. Yes, maybe 1 in 1,000 is good. He's not joking. Most Greenland rubies are too included, too fractured, but every so often one emerges that holds. And those few, deep crimson, almost oily in their luster, fetch prices that make governments notice. A Canadian company tried to mine here in the early 2000s. It got political fast. Locals protested, environmentalists warned. Greenland's ice is melting, and beneath it, resources the world suddenly wants, rubies included. Historians still argue whether the mine's sudden closure was economics, protest pressure, or something else entirely. Lars just says, too much talking, not enough finding. You spend the night in a tent that rustles like paper. The wind howls in voices that aren't yours. You take out your ruby and sapphire, still warm. You place them side by side on a flat rock. The Greenland light doesn't sparkle, it reveals. And for a second, the two stones look like they're made from the same vein of earth. Then the temperature drops fast. You scramble to protect them, your fingers too slow. They tumble from the rock. Not far, but far enough. The sapphire cracks against the ground. Just a hairline, barely visible. But it's there now, permanent. You sit in silence. You breathe like someone trying not to wake the ground. The next day, a geologist named Nevi shows you something odd. A ruby locked inside a bubble of amphibolite. It's distorted, twisted even, like it tried to grow, but something resisted. She says Greenland's rubies are some of the oldest on the planet, almost 3 billion years, formed when the crust was still molten in places, shifting, chaotic. Rubies born in such chaos, she explains, often carry fractures. Wounds, really. You ask if they're still valuable. She looks at you like you missed the point. Sometimes, she says, the flaws are the story. By now your fingertips are cracked and bleeding. You've lost feeling in one boot. You dig anyway. You crack stone. You whisper to it. You beg. Nothing. Until in the quiet hour before sunrise, when the wind dies and the ice softens, you find a piece, not large, not perfect, but unmistakably ruby, and in it a glint of blue. Just a speck, like your sapphire trapped inside the heart of this stone. You don't know what it means, you don't ask. You just wrap it in cloth and say thank you. To the rock, to the wind, to the silence that lets you find it. You leave Greenland lighter, colder, and with a growing suspicion. There's one more stone you're meant to find, but not in the earth. Somewhere else. You return home with dirt still under your nails and ice still in your bones, but something's missing. You've seen rubies pulled from jungle pits that reek of ghost stories. You've waded through Sri Lankan sapphire beds lit by myth. You've dug through Montana's frozen rivers where ghosts of gold rushes still echo in the pine. You've cracked open ancient Greenland stone with fingers stiff from windburn and awe. And yet, the one stone you were sure existed, the one you felt calling you across time, across oceans, across every time zone, never appeared. No map marked it. No miner hinted at it. No trader tried to fake it. But you know it's out there, because every other stone seemed to point toward it. You sit at your desk now, the ruby and sapphire beside you, wrapped in soft cloth like relics. You unfold them. The ruby, deep, dark, now no longer warm. The sapphire cracked, but still luminous in a way that makes you think of old mirrors and deep lakes. You place them beside each other, just as you have a dozen times before. And for a split second, they don't just sit, they react. The crack in the sapphire glints like it's alive. The ruby's edge catches your lamp and flares red, like an ember. Then nothing, just stillness. Just two stones and a room that suddenly feels a little smaller than it did. You begin to wonder if the rarest gem of all isn't underground. Maybe it was never buried, but hidden somewhere even harder to reach. In memory, in moments you didn't notice, in the people who showed you where not to look. You take the pouch from Montana, the old one, with the initials. Inside you place the ruby, then the sapphire. You tie it shut, and then, almost on impulse, you place it in a drawer, not to hide it, but to rest it. Let it be still, because some stones need silence before they speak. Later you take out your notes, sketches, photos, the stories people told you, the ones they didn't, the way Kumari touched the water before entering the shaft, the kid in Myanmar who stared at you like he knew something you didn't, the geologist in Greenland who said flaws are the story. And then you find it, not a stone, a thread. Every place you went, someone mentioned a gem that didn't match the rest, a sapphire that burned red under moonlight, a ruby that turned blue when touched by cold, a stone split in two and scattered across the world, one piece in fire, one in frost. Some say it's legend, others say it's just misidentification, bad lighting, optical illusions. Historians still argue whether a dual-colored corundum was ever documented in the old Persian archives. But one thing's for sure, you've been chasing something more than minerals. You've been chasing connection. So you go back out, not to a mine this time, not to a river, but to a museum, a dusty, half-forgotten mineral room in a university basement. And there it is, not on display, but in storage, marked only as unknown bicolor specimen. It's small, irregular, and unmistakably real. Red and blue split like day and dusk, like fire and sky, like ruby and sapphire in one. You hold it and something shifts. Your ruby stays warm, your sapphire crack vanishes, and just for a moment you feel whole.